How's it going, everyone? It's Javi from Weather Storm 1000. As today is August 30th, 2019, as Hurricane Dorian is just north of the Dominican Republic, and it's starting to form an eye wall as it's currently a 110 mile per hour hurricane with its millibar pressure down to 971. So it definitely has strengthened from my last update. I think in my last update I did, it was only an 80 mile per hour category 1 hurricane, just a couple miles north of Puerto Rico, but now it's several miles north. It's definitely strengthening, and as you could see in the satellite imagery, we have a defining eye that's starting to form in the middle of Dorian, and we're starting to see the hurricane become more proportional because before it was very lopsided. We saw a lot of that moisture more towards the eastern portion of the storm, but now we're starting to see the moisture form in all areas of the storm, and those clusters of thunderstorms starting to form right around the eye wall as it's pretty much in nearly rapid intensification at this point, as we will see that the eye will continue to strengthen, that the eye wall will continue to have strong winds, and we see this upper level low that's just north of Cuba. It's starting to spin more towards the west, so it won't affect it anymore with very little wind shear. And if we look at the wind shear map currently, we see that there's mostly moderate to light wind shear hindering this storms, but it isn't enough to really hinder it from really rapidly intensifying. The dry air has subsided, as I'm gonna show you in the current satellite imagery. As you can see, not much dry air to the south side of the storm. That upper level low was entraining some dry air, which mainly kept the storm from really rapidly intensifying just north of Puerto Rico. But now we're seeing the dry air to a lesser extent to the south of this storm, and in fact we're starting to see those outflow bands starting to outflow from the southern side of the storm, which is showing that the wind shear is definitely dying down from this upper level low. And as this upper level low continues to move west, and as Dorian continues to move west, that wind shear should die down because the wind at the upper level because the wind from the upper level low and the wind from the hurricane are going to go the same direction. And wind shear is when the winds rapidly change speed or direction within height. And we're gonna barely see that as this upper level low is just gonna center itself towards the south of this Hurricane Dorian, where Hurricane Dorian is gonna be going the same direction as where the upper level lows winds will be blowing. So let's look at the current track of this forecast, and you could see that it's expected to strengthen, and I'm definitely not surprised by that. The wind shear should be relatively light till it reaches the Florida area, or who knows, maybe it could make landfall in the more northern portion of Georgia, South Carolina. That's definitely not out of the question. People make the mistake thinking that the hurricane is most likely going to go in the center of this track, but I want to tell you right now, that is completely the wrong way to look at it. Think about that this hurricane could go anywhere within this track. It could make landfall near the Keys. It could make landfall near Miami. Could make landfall near West Palm Beach. Could go up north, completely missing Florida, and make landfall in Savannah, or even 2/3 of the time the hurricane stays off this cone. But so there's still a lot of uncertainty where exactly this could go, but I could say with confidence Florida is going to get impacted, and I would say impacted pretty hard, especially if there's a landfall. The best case scenario would be if this storm stays offshore, but that is less likely, but certainly not out of the possibilities just yet. And in terms of, so let's see what the computer models are currently saying, and you could see that I'm gonna put the normalized anomaly. There's Dorian right here, and then it's gonna be interesting to see because this storm has been moving a little slower than expected, and if this storm moves slower than expected, we could see the ridge weaken a little bit more before Dorian gets to Florida, and we could see this trough come a little faster than when Dorian reaches Florida, which could mean that if Dorian goes slower, there's a higher chance that Dorian moves north before it makes landfall. So for Florida, they should be hoping that it moves slower, but just because it moves slower doesn't mean it will stay completely offshore, because even if it does move, take that northward turn, and doesn't make landfall in Florida, which I find still unlikely, I still think we're going to see a landfall in Florida. Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina are not out, are very likely to receive landfall. One of those states, even if it just turns north before it makes landfall in Florida. But if we see Dorian move slower, we could see this trough form faster than when Dorian gets to the trough. But as you can see, the European model is expecting that Dorian will just move fast enough to where, unfortunately, it'll make landfall in Florida. And unfortunately, it's going to be moving very slowly. So the European model models the hurricane daily. As you can see, Tuesday, it's just off the coast of West Palm Beach. A day later, look how much it moved. Barely. We're talking about a potential extensive rain event in Florida, as we don't want to see this storm move slowly, but unfortunately it might, because there's just a lack of steering currents that's really gonna steer this storm away or fast from Florida. This high pressure won't be very strong by the time it reaches Florida. This trough won't dip all the way down to where it'll suck it up and completely speed it out to sea, and we might see a little bit of a high pressure form right around the Louisiana area that's gonna kind of slow it down, as the high pressures will be fighting to keep to steer Dorian in a certain direction. But unfortunately, we're gonna see very weak steering currents around the Florida area, which could mean a prolonged period of rain and storm surge, and that could be devastating, especially when we're talking about a Category 4 hurricane, a little similar to Harvey, but unlike Harvey, this could potentially be stronger around the Florida area and could last for a long time, because if we see the current forecast of Tuesday a.m., once it makes landfall, potentially, maybe it goes off here, but if it makes landfall in Florida, it's going to be 125 miles per hour. But then a day, even if it stays on land, it's still going to maintain hurricane strength, which is insane. It's due to how close in proximity Florida is to water. Even if the eye is on land, we still have the Dorian still has the Atlantic Ocean to feed off of, and the Gulf of Mexico to feed off of, and it'll rotate those thunder bands in the eye. So even if it does make landfall and stays in Florida on land for a long period of time, don't expect rapid decreasing in winds as you may think, because Hurricane Dorian could still suck up a lot of that Gulf of Mexico and ocean water in and around Florida. But you can see the European is taking more of a West Palm Beach track, and then taking it all through Florida, which I think is completely devastating. And for the GFS, it's taking there's the latest run of the GFS just came out today. It's taking a slightly northward track, but it's scary because both the European and GFS are in pretty large agreement that this is going to make landfall in around the same area, which I would estimate is between West Palm Beach and Daytona Beach. So right around the central Florida area, definitely could receive a landfalling hurricane, as it's becoming more likely because both of the computer models are in pretty big agreement that this may happen, and this will definitely slow down. And then after that, look, the Carolinas, Georgia will not be out of the woods just yet. And then there's the latest run. I'm just first seeing the rest of this too. Even up to maybe even Virginia could be affected by this. I don't want to make predictions past this point because that gets a little iffy after that. So the Northeast I won't bring up into this just yet, but it's pretty likely this storm will move north, affect Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. So this could be a prolonged period event, bringing heavy rain to plenty of areas along the coast, and we could be talking not inches but feet of rain in Florida due to its slow movement. But it's expected to strengthen, lack of wind shear, as I'll show you right here. You can see that wind shear is expected to die down as that upper level low moves with the high pressure in the Gulf of Mexico moves towards the west and gives Dorian an open opportunity to strengthen, and we will see those warm water temperatures, which won't be at all be a problem because look at the upper ocean heat content. It's just going to be very, very warm water temperatures. So the GFS is taking around, and what's scary about the GFS is that it's very slow moving. Like, look at the last several runs before it makes landfall. 954, it's strength. Not only is it moving slowly, but it's strengthening while moving slowly. I'm not sure if it's going to strengthen for that long, because if a hurricane stays over the ocean for a very long time, it's going to bring a lot of upwellings from the bottom of the ocean and bring a lot of that cooler water up around Dorian, which may hinder it from strengthening too far if it slows down over the ocean. But we still could see a Category 4 hurricane, and Category 5 is not out of the question. I'm going to say that right now. We're hoping that there may be some wind shear, but it won't be very much based off of what I'm seeing, because the only hope in terms of wind shear we might get is if this weak high pressure, like some of the models are predicting what may form over Florida, if it brings winds from the northeast, while Dorian is trying to go towards the west, it may bring some wind shear. But now, since the storm is moving north, it seems like that weak high pressure that the European and Dorian, GFS and European were favoring earlier, seems to be dying down. So it's unlikely. So it's less likely now it's going to take the southward track. It's still a possibility. Look how big this cone is, and it's expected to continue strengthening. As I'm surprised during the 11 o'clock update, which came out, the storm didn't strengthen, but I guarantee it's going to strengthen because we're seeing that eye form, and when that eye forms, that usually means like it's going to rapidly intensify. So I expect a Category 3 in the next update. Just maybe it could reach Category 4 strength, but we need to see how these eye wall replacement cycles play out over time, because they usually could hinder the storm from developing, which we hope is going to happen. But unfortunately, there's just not hope. We got a perfect outflow channel, nice warm waters, and little dry air to really affect it. And yeah, and it's expected to grow stronger, and this could be a prolonged period of event in Florida. So Florida, prepare now. I'll definitely don't take a chance like, oh, it might miss here. Prepare now. It's better to be safe than sorry, even if it doesn't directly hit your area. And it could hit all direct areas in Florida. So prepare now, Florida, because this could potentially be a devastating event. And then Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina needs to be watching very closely, because if this scenario comes true, this will be a top 5 most costly disaster in U.S. history. And that's my prediction. And I don't want to say it to be dramatic, but I want people to take urgency with this storm, because if the worst case scenario happens, that could be a devastation for the state. And I thank you guys for watching. I'll probably do a quicker update than this next video, and I hope you guys have a good day.